Sometimes tempers flare and unfortunately mistakes happen. If you ever find yourself charged with domestic violence, it's important to get a great team of lawyers on your side who can prepare you for the tough road ahead. Jansen Alfrey, attorneys at law, are members of the Colorado and Denver Bar Association. They belong to the Colorado Criminal Defense Bar and the National College of DUI Defense Attorneys, and they have no complaints registered with the Better Business Bureau. Molly Jansen and Kurt Alfrey join us today. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks.
Now, today we're going to be talking about domestic violence. It's a horrible thing that it happens, but it does happen, and people need to be aware of what to do when and if it does happen. Because explain that sometimes it doesn't take striking a person to be charged with domestic violence. So let's start with how can you get charged with domestic violence?
Screaming, throwing stuff. Taking the phone away from the person that you're dealing with, your spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever it is. You don't have to actually touch someone in order to commit a crime that's going to qualify under domestic violence. So you have to be very careful about that. So as you're in that big fight and you're breaking lamps, that's generally going to be criminal mischief with domestic violence, and there you are, you're in the system.
And if something like this breaks out and someone grabs the phone from someone else and then that person calls the police and the police come out, someone's going to get arrested.
Someone's going to jail, and that's just the law, actually, because you can imagine they said, oh no, we're fine, go ahead, police, go ahead and leave, and then the problem really hasn't resolved itself. So that's the way it goes. Someone's going.
Yeah, so you really, again, preach to everyone, if you have an anger problem, you need to find a situation, and don't put yourself in a situation that you can get yourself in trouble. A lot of times that revolves around drinking and drugs, parties. Are you also seeing an increase with the economy being down?
Yeah, the holidays are particularly difficult for people, especially when the economy isn't doing very well and people are losing their jobs and sort of hanging on by a thread. And so then you add drugs, alcohol, and already a situation that's, having conflict, eventually something bad happens. So what we tell people is, first of all, if you're having those issues, don't drink around your spouse or girlfriend or whatever. If you already know that you have an adversarial relationship, don't do drugs. Walk away. Find another way to handle your anger or your issue, as opposed to getting into the heat of the moment and then ultimately being charged.
Now let's say there's children present and they're not involved with the domestic violence dispute, but being that they're present, can that still charge someone with child abuse?
Sure. It's called putting a child in a place that could be injurious to his health, basically. A child witnessing domestic violence, being in someone's arms while it's happening, driving in a car with someone who's had too much to drink, those all qualify as child abuse.
So you need to be aware that you can get yourself into a lot more trouble than just in an argument with your spouse or your girlfriend or whatever.
Well, and under the law, once that happens, you're arrested and you're not released on bond until you see a judge. We call that the fast track program in Colorado. You have to see a judge, you have to be placed on bond, and there's a mandatory protection order that goes into place. So once that happens, you're not going home. You're not having contact with the kids if they were there, or the alleged victim in the case. You're out. You have to figure out what you're going to do next, but that's mandatory by statute.
And it's a pretty complicated process. So if you do get charged, you probably should be contacting an attorney, because you could be looking at a lot of charges and just digging yourself into a deeper hole if you don't.
Domestic violence has so many layers in the law, with the protection order and the things that Molly was talking about, and a lot of the requirements that would come as part of a sentence in a domestic violence case. You really do need to talk to someone right away that knows what they're doing, because time is of the essence. Things are happening very quickly that can affect your rights and your livelihood down the road.
And if you are a victim or feel like you may be a victim, you're always telling people too, get help. I mean, make the proper phone calls, get in touch with the right agencies.
Tons of resources available for that. Make the call, get safe, get out.
Now, it's a lot more serious now than it used to be also. Can you explain some of the changes in the laws?
Well, there are, and Molly can speak to this, there's changes on what are the requirements as part of a sentence with the domestic violence classes. And you want to talk about that a sec?
Ultimately, it's now discretionary, so you can be on probation for a really long period of time, whereas before that was not the case. So it essentially can be a bad situation.
Yeah, all right, so it is a bad situation. And again, as you always stress, if you think you're a person that has an anger issue, don't drink, don't do drugs, and put yourself away from the situation. So thanks so much for sharing this information. I'm going to tell our viewers how they can get a hold of you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Jansen Alfrey wants to ensure that you're represented fairly and informed about the charges against you before you make a bad decision. They're a criminal defense law firm. They handle everything from traffic offenses to domestic violence to DUI to major felonies. Call them at 303-297-3500 or visit their website at jansenalfrey.com. Remember that they offer free consultations, so do take advantage of that. The number again is 303-297-3500.